This is from the January 24th BOE meeting during the budget portion of the superintendent report. I'm going to let it play for a while.
And the last one is one that I never thought I'd have to talk about, but I think in fairness to you and the people at home who may not know this, I referenced it earlier, and I have to be very clear when I state this. I don't want anybody to misread something or say God knows what. Drezek said this. I have no problem with the Freedom of Information Act. I have no problem with, this has nothing to do with the press or the media, or I've asked some of the reporters who may call you guys, I've always said the same thing to reporters. Even when it's inconvenient, I know you got a job to do, and your job is to tell a story. That's not what I'm talking about here. Traditionally, our FOI requests that come into the district, they're pretty simple. It's usually around some sort of a contract, possibly a disciplinary letter or something along those lines. To give you an example, bus consultants, notorious for sending an FOI request for our bus contract so that they can try to outbid Smith Bus when our bid comes up. Copy people, relentless. They're like solar people when you get on your cell phones. The copy people will send us FOI requests relentlessly. Those are easy fixes because they're public documents. We're a public agency. We take them. Doesn't take much review. It's all public. We charge them 50 cents a page. We give it to them. There are other requests that are typical, not just contracts, but employment contracts. Sometimes, a lot of times, word may get out to the media that a staff member got in trouble. So we'll get an FOI request for a disciplinary record. Those are easy to turn over because when that disciplinary record is written, it's written with the knowledge that this will become a public document. So we make sure that we don't put any personal violation information into the letter. So it's a matter of just taking them and sending them or allowing the people to look at them. Parents' FOI stuff about their kids. I have no problem with any of it. I really had no problem with all of it until this year. In the last year, the amount of FOI requests and the sheer volume of those requests are unlike anything I have ever seen in my life.
Does he think that FOIA requests are for the press and copy paper people? FOIA requests are there for the public to hold the government agencies accountable. A side effect is that copy people get access to it. But the reason for them is so the public can hold the government agencies accountable. I'm not sure he understands that.
And I've talked to a lot of colleagues who are amazed at the junk that we've had to produce. And this is where I think the public needs to understand. Freedom of information doesn't mean free for you guys. The person getting the information, it's free, but it's not for you. Let me tell you what I mean. The requests that we've gotten in the last 12 months, again, I don't want the media to think I don't want to talk to them. I don't, but they know that.
That's supposed to be a joke.
That's not what I'm talking about. When we get a request that is so expansive that asks for every communication for the last 6 months between all 9 of you, me, the 11 town council members, with a word in it, those become so expansive, I can't just pull like a copier contract off the shelf and hand them to them because there are concerns of information that I legally can't turn over. There is, first and foremost, confidential, federally protected student privacy information in those. There is protected personnel information in those. There is HIPAA information in those. There are attorney-client privilege information that we're not legally allowed to turn over. So there's two options when we get an overwhelming request like that. And I'm not picking on one person here. This has been going on from a year from multiple people. When we get a request like that, I got two options. Pull all the information, send it out, and hope for the best and let the chips fall where they may. But I put at risk you guys, because if I turn over something that I'm not supposed to, you own it. If I violate a kid's federally protected privacy rights and that parent sees this and they file suit against us, they're going to win. We talked earlier about we live in a litigious society. This is what I'm talking about. Or my other option is I've got to go through all of it from the eyes of a lawyer to make sure what I'm giving up, I'm supposed to give up. I'm not a lawyer. So every one of these giant requests has to go through our legal counsel. That going through our legal counsel costs money. To date, does not include January because I haven't got the bill yet, but we had a doozy in January. To date, we have spent $75,000 on these FOI requests. Not
maybe, just maybe, you could have answered the question a year ago. The first time, the second time, the 50th time we asked. Do I need to make a video of how many times we've asked? We've asked in emails. We've asked in person. Countless times. Still no answers. Other than it was a mistake and we've answered this so many times. Those are the only two answers, if you want to call them that we've ever gotten.
Not parents looking for information on kids, not the copy guy who asks me every year, not the bus people. FOI requests about every communication all 9 of you have ever had. And I'm not just talking about emails. I'm talking about phone calls, recordings of phone calls. I don't know about you guys, but I ain't Richard Nixon. Nobody's recording my phone calls that I know of. If you're recording it, you got it already. Even take that a step beyond. Having to produce logs of our phone calls to turn over. My question is, for what? Why? So some people can take shots at each other on Facebook? So that people can make silly videos and become stars online?
I'm no star. I'm not anything. I'm nobody. Mr. Drezek, everything you think about me, about my motivations, about pretty much everything for the past year is wrong. You don't know anything about me. I'm just fed up with the bullshit that we see happening every day with no accountability. And anybody that disagrees with you or the narrative is an enemy. They're basically a terrorist. For what? Because we ask questions. You have Tina, chair of the Board of Ed, goes on record stating that the committee that was supposed to be set up to look into the whole issue as far as the pizza assignment goes, and she outright says that it will not be looking into that at all. For what reason? Spite. We find emails between Drezek and school staff praising them for not answering questions, and then doubles down and says that he's not going to answer either. Then we find through a FOIA request that he gives a 5-page, ridiculously long non-answer to one member of the community. I don't know why he chose that one person to respond to, but 5 pages and still doesn't give an answer, just gives lots of excuses and conspiracy theories. And for what? I've listened to him take no responsibility for anything for the past year and a half. Nothing is ever his fault. Everything's always a mistake. Everything is always somebody else's fault. Not once has he said, you know what? I was wrong. That won't happen again. Everything is always somebody else's fault. Every time. And that gets old fast. At some point, you have to be responsible. You have to be accountable. And there's none of that going on.
I'm sure as these words are coming to my mouth right now, I'm on somebody's video.
Damn right you are.
With that. Because you know what? The video right now is free. But every time we get one of these expansive ones, those of you who, we've heard people come right to the dais and make reference to the information they got through an FOI request. Those of you who have seen it, if you've seen the redaction in it, newsflash, I didn't redact it. I don't have a black electronic Sharpie. Your lawyer did that. We are going to be over $100,000 this year for the size. We had an FOI request that was so large that we couldn't even transport the documents to the respondent. We had to actually pay our attorney to set one up on their server and give the person requesting the information a 7-day window to go in and electronically download it.
Because he refuses to answer the damn questions. He bitches and complains about all this. He said for a year that it's a political stunt. The only political stunt I see is on him not answering it. In one of the emails, speaking about us, he says, they're actually a well-funded, politically driven propaganda organization. Show me where these funds are, because I'm not seeing any of them. And I don't know who any of this is. Politically driven propaganda organizations who use our students' best interests as props in their cultural warfare. He uses the term warfare. And this is not something I or my staff are willing to participate in. You seem like a reasonable person. Why else would people who really know what happened, why are we asking questions? Ignore the facts. And still try to stage a show at a Board of Ed meeting. Nobody's staging anything. We're asking questions repeatedly, and you're refusing to answer. You're actively not answering. You're actively making sure your staff don't answer. Again, FOIA requests are not about transparency. They're about accountability. And if you just answer the damn questions in the first place, you wouldn't have this to worry about.
Why? Did it better anybody's life by doing it? I don't know. I'm not in social media world, so maybe it was worth it. But you're asking me how I'm going to spend your money? And I'm telling you, this is where some of it's going. And I understand the argument that people are going to say FOI is about transparency. You're right. I 100% believe you. I agree with you. But you know what else is transparency? What I'm telling you guys right now. Because the people at home, our taxpayers, our parents, our kids need to know when they need something.
Our kids. They're not your kids. They're your students. The fact that you keep calling them your kids makes you think that you have certain rights and certain privileges to make decisions for them that you don't have. Stop calling them your kids. They're not your kids. They're your students. Stop calling them our kids.
Something and we can't do it, it's because we have obligations that we have to pay that we don't necessarily agree with. I'm going to pick on you because I know this question is coming. Excuse me. And I know it's coming because when I said this last week, I can tell by your question you didn't like it. But I told you guys at last meeting we're not having summer school this year. Now, staffing summer school is still going to be a challenge. But what we spent, and I just told you, that's 3 weeks of summer school. It's 3 weeks of summer school because we had to pay for this. That's my soapbox on this. Now I want to get back to what's important.
I'll be at the February 14th BOE meeting. Spend Valentine's Day at the BOE meeting. My wife's going to love that. I look forward to seeing you there, Mr. Drezek. It's becoming clear that my efforts on this side of the fence are not being as effective as I'd like them to be. Maybe it's time I start looking at the other side of the fence. Maybe take a more active role in things. I don't know. Something that could have been handled a year ago by just answering the questions. We're not violating any rules. We're not putting anybody's personal information out there. The questions that I asked are reasonable questions to ask, and you refuse to answer them. If you had answered the questions, I probably would have gone away. I'd probably be gone away, and I'd be very happy about that. Instead, you've created a mountain. Well, I think it's time I step things up a little bit. I do have one last question for you. Is your resume up to date? That's all.